On the following sponsored program are strictly those of the hosts, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors.
Welcome to Ask the Experts radio show, proudly sponsored by board-certified family law attorney Tina Lewert of Lewert Law, LLC. Sit back for the next half hour as host Steve-O interviews top experts in the fields of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Steve-O offers such educational topics as community association law, family law, chiropractic care, employment law, healthcare law, and public insurance adjusting. Interviews by top experts in their field. And now, here's your host, Steve-O.
Hey, how you doing? We have an expert tonight that I'm telling you, you do. Jackie Grady of Grady Legal, and I know people have so many questions out there. I'm not going to open it up tonight to questions until next month when she's back with us again, because we have got so much information to get out tonight. And I know you're hearing all kinds of information out there, and maybe tonight we can clear that up. But I'm so lucky, God blessed me to get one of the finest employment attorneys in South Florida. So let me welcome Jackie Grady, who we've already done a show on healthcare law.
Yeah, thanks, Steve, for having me back. I really appreciate it.
You were so good.
Thank you.
It's like you've been doing this before, and the smile, you got to get rid of that great smile. So tell everybody about your firm.
Sure.
You're in Deerfield, but it doesn't matter because if they want to Zoom, it doesn't matter if they're in Miami or Jupiter.
Correct. So our main office is in Deerfield. We have a satellite office in Vero Beach. We practice throughout the state of Florida. I'm also licensed in Pennsylvania as well. So,
right?
Yeah.
So is that how you started, was employment law?
Back when I was a baby lawyer, it was. I was a judicial clerk for a judge who's now in the Western District of Pennsylvania, and then I went to a boutique firm in Pittsburgh. That's where I started, doing labor and employment issues. And then I moved down here, and for the past 18 years or so, it's been labor and employment.
What is, now with COVID right now, what are most of the calls you're getting involved?
The big one, and I think we've seen this in the news lately, is, can my employer require a vaccine? And I think
yes.
a lot of people are nervous about that. The short answer to that question is yes, they can. There's no law saying...
Sorry for the bad news.
Sorry for the bad news if you don't want the vaccine. But that doesn't mean we would counsel our business owners to mandate a vaccine, because that's a very draconian type of solution. And I think we're going to see litigation coming out of this. Obviously, I said the short answer to this is yes, there's always religious and disability medical reason exceptions to that rule. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with this as this unfolds.
Okay. So one of my first questions was, can an employer mandate the vaccine? But is that, I can understand a hospital, which we were just talking about. I could understand a healthcare office, but is that for any kind of business?
Any kind of business. Now, I think there can be an argument made is it reasonably necessary for that business to mandate a vaccine? And it's interesting, there's actually a lawsuit that's already been filed up in Virginia against George Mason University. They were requiring the vaccine, and there's a professor that already had COVID. He's immune to it. He gets the antibody test.
Right.
He says, why are you making me get the vaccine when I already had it?
Right.
That you can't compel me, and it's really not necessary for me to teach a class to have this vaccine.
So does he have a case?
Well, it's been filed. So, yes, it will be interesting to see how this weaves its way through the courts.
Right. Wow, that's amazing. Do you expect to see a lot of lawsuits?
I do, because there's so many gray areas, and that's the one thing I love about what we do with labor and employment, and especially with healthcare. It's not a one-size-fits-all, even though the law tries to be a one-size-fits-all.
Right.
So every company, every employer is different. Like you had just said, obviously nursing homes and hospitals, you can see maybe a greater motivation to require the vaccine versus an accounting firm or a landscaping company. Why would people need to have the vaccine for those types of companies? So I think there's definitely going to be some lawsuits arising out of this.
Well, I got to tell you, I just saw something where a nurse was talking about who works for one of the Broward hospitals that said next week everything's going to be shut down. And I guess my concern is it was pretty bad when a lot of these businesses were shut down.
Yes.
And I mean, there's a lot of people out there that had jobs that lost their jobs. I'm really worried about that happening again. But what do you think is going to happen? What is your gut feeling with this mandate for the vaccination? Will it be the same for the vaccination as it is for the mask? Are they two different areas?
Those are two different areas. And that's one of the things that we would counsel our employers. If the vaccine doesn't make sense for your workforce, so you're not in a hospital, you're not in a nursing home, if it doesn't make sense for your workforce, there are less restrictive measures such as masks, such as social distancing, hand sanitizers, juggling hours so you don't have as many people in the office at the same time. So there's different ways to try to keep people from transmitting this. And obviously, from day one, we've been telling our employers, be flexible, be understanding, maybe have a little bit more of a liberal PTO policy. So if somebody isn't feeling well, they don't feel like they have to come in and all of a sudden they get half the office sick.
Well, what do you think these employers are going to... I had this great question. I know it. They can ask them if they've had the vaccination, can they?
You can ask. That's not a
Well,
violation.
what about HIPAA?
It's not a violation of HIPAA, and that is a big misunderstanding.
That's right. People do not, because I thought HIPAA kept you don't have to answer that.
No. So HIPAA is a law that really goes towards the medical providers.
Okay.
They're not allowed to release your information unless you authorize them to do so. Your employer, and I think a lot of people get mixed up with the Americans with Disability Act. Your employer can ask for limited medical information. For instance, you're going to apply for health insurance.
Okay.
Or you're going to ask for leave under the Family Medical Leave Act. You have to provide some sort of health information. For instance, they may require you to provide a doctor's note. That's all okay. They can ask you if you've had the vaccine. Where it becomes sort of a sticky wicket a little bit is when that conversation morphs into something more. Not just, do you have the vaccine? And then it becomes, do you have underlying health conditions?
Okay.
And you start talking about someone's medical issues, and then that becomes more of an ADA, or Americans with Disability Act violation, than it is a HIPAA violation. What HIPAA would prevent is your employer calling your doctor and say, hey, was Steve in today?
Oh.
The doctor can't tell your employer that, yeah, Steve came in because he wasn't feeling well.
Well, is there another way? I'm seeing all different things out there where companies are coming up with inducements to get people to vaccinate. Why is it that this seems like they're pushing this more than anything has ever been put? I'm not getting political, because I've never seen the extent. I mean, no one ever asked you at your job, have you had your flu shot? More people die from flu than COVID. What do you think is going on?
I think there's that fear about the lockdown.
Okay.
I mean, it becomes a lesser of evils. Do you want to be shut down and keep everybody home, or everyone get the vaccine and we can stay open and feel like our workforce is protected? But I think there's really an underlying concern, too, of what COVID hospitalizations are going to do to employers' health insurance premiums. There is certainly, we are seeing already that someone that goes into an ICU, not even on a ventilator, but they're in for a couple weeks just getting supplemental oxygen, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 in claims. That's hitting an employer's insurance.
It's funny because, listen, that's what you're in. You're in the healthcare law business, and I thought about you yesterday because the numbers came out by the CDC of how many people have been found to be, this is in Florida, positive, and it turned out the numbers were completely wrong. They had combined 3 or 4 days to make it look like that was all in one day. I'm just, I think people are just, worried because we keep getting different stories. And here now you're talking about hospitals, and we talked about this last time. They get more money if it's COVID.
Absolutely, and that is what we are expecting to see. Is that this is almost like a blank check. We're going to see facilities charging everything that they possibly can for under COVID, and we're also expecting insurance carriers to sort of ding employers years from now because of potential COVID cases that are happening right now.
Wow, it's going to go that long.
Yes.
And, I think, listen, if someone has a business, God, you should absolutely give Jackie a call, because you might be paying for things that you shouldn't be paying for.
Absolutely.
Give us an example.
Well, I'll give you, there's about
A dollar-wise example.
a dollar-wise example. First off, we can say about 20 to 30% of all bills contain fraud, waste, and abuse.
Oh, my gosh.
So you think about that, 30 cents on every dollar, it wasn't correct, right? So
Okay.
you could save that automatically. And we actually just have an interesting situation come in where a woman went through a pre-planned surgery. During that surgery, an emergency occurred, and they had to bring in an emergency doctor. And it literally was for a few stitches,
Please don't tell me how much.
$36,000. And she got that bill.
They've been getting away with this for a long time, haven't they?
Yes, they have.
So, aren't you a little nervous? Because, you're taking some of their bread and butter away from them.
No, and look, I come from a family...
$36,000 for few minutes?
For a few minutes.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Our philosophy is, and I come from a family of physicians, they deserve to make money, right?
Right, yeah.
We have the best doctors, we have the
I
best
agree.
nurses, we have the best medical professionals anywhere in the world. They deserve to be paid. And I don't see slight markups.
Okay.
I'm seeing 10,000% markups.
Exactly.
And that's where I sort of draw the line and say, wait a second. That's not reasonable. That's not fair. That's not right. I think anybody would agree with that.
Do you get into pharmaceutical prescription?
Yes.
Because some of these numbers are just outrageous,
Yes.
what we're charged. But now, how do you know what should be a normal rate?
So there are methods. We have a proprietary method where we can go in and look at the cost. And that cost takes into everything from the value of care. And there's ways to analyze that, like reinfection rates. We know if a hospital or a doctor is known for reinfection rates, so they have less value than somebody who doesn't.
Okay.
And so we can put a value on that. We also geographically, obviously, different areas of the country, it's going to be cheaper, it's going to be more expensive depending where you live. So those all get factored in, and then we do a markup like any business because they deserve to make a profit, they deserve to
Exactly.
make money, and we do a profit. We mark it up to give them a profit off that base cost. So one of the things we say is like if that woman comes to me with a $36,000 bill, we don't negotiate that down because that's off of a bad charge. We
Yes.
find the cost and we say, this is what you're going to get. And this is what we're going
What
to...
should that cost have been?
We haven't... This just came in. We haven't done the scrub
Okay.
yet. But based upon my experience, we're probably looking at $4,000 to $5,000.
Wow. That's still a lot. If you think about comes in for a few minutes and stitches.
It is. And again...
But I don't know what the going rate is, so...
Well, the surgery, we look at the surgery. Obviously, working on someone's brain is going to be different than,
Right.
stitching up their, knee or something like that. So we do look at all those factors. But I will tell you, when we started doing this, I would have been happy if we had saved 50% off people's bills. We're running at about 75%.
Wow. That is amazing. Jackie, give everybody your number. We're going to go to break.
Sure. It's 754-333-0313.
We're going to go to break. When we come back, we've got more with our employment show with Jackie Grady. We'll be right back.
Grady Legal PA is a boutique labor, employment, and healthcare firm serving clients throughout Florida. Founded by Jacqueline Grady, Grady Legal is helping companies and individuals fight back against the predatory billing schemes of America's healthcare system and insurance carriers. Jacqueline is at the forefront of these emerging legal issues and was featured in the Wall Street Journal for her efforts to combat inflated hospital charges. For over 20 years, Jacqueline Grady has assisted businesses and employees in navigating the various federal and state laws governing discrimination, overtime pay, and fiduciary duty under healthcare plans. If your health insurance premiums are exploding, deductibles increasing, and are still receiving surprise medical bills, contact Grady Legal PA, as a high percentage of bills contain incorrect or fraudulent charges. If you want an evaluation of whether there has been a violation of discrimination or wage laws, contact Grady Legal today at 754-333-0313, 754-333-0313.
We are back. This is the Ask the Expert show. I'm Steve-O. We have got, this show is so amazing tonight. It's on employment law. And basically, that involves everybody, except for you people who are sitting home collecting an extra check. I'm not saying anything. It's your life. But we have one of the finest employment lawyers, I would say, in the state of Florida, Jackie Grady, Grady Legal. And we're talking about, of course, COVID, because that's top of mind, everybody. And I asked her because the movie was on the other night. It was with Denzel Washington. True story, John Q. You remember that movie? And what happened was his little 8-year-old son needed a heart transplant. And the hospital, oh my God, it almost made you hate the hospital. It was like, well, we got, your insurance is only going to pay like $20,000. It's like, who knows what it is now, but I think at the time it was $250,000, and your insurance doesn't cover it. Hey, well, wait a minute, I've been paying for it all this time. So he goes into the HR department, and turns out they changed the insurance. And it didn't kick in for 90 days or something, but no one said anything to him. And it was so sad seeing what he had to go through trying to collect the money to save his son's life. Is that really go on with insurance companies?
Well, that
and companies who go to a new insurance policy?
Yeah, it happens frequently, not quite like that. I wish John Q would have called me because I could have saved him a lot of aggravation. But no, seriously, it's actually governed by ERISA. So healthcare plans, it's governed by a federal law. And anytime there is a substantial change in your insurance, you have to notify the employees.
Oh.
So either they didn't
How
tell...
old is that law, though?
Oh, that's been around for quite some time. You probably have heard of it like the 401k context where people were suing because of unreasonable fees and investments. But it applies to healthcare plans as well.
What do you think all this COVID, what is this going to do to the cost of healthcare?
Well, we're going to see with employer-sponsored insurance plans, when an employer goes to get their health insurance, they don't just pick a number out of the hat for the premium. I mean, they have this down to a science.
Okay.
And they'll look to about 3 to 5 years worth of claims. And what we're anticipating is that the insurance companies are either going to say, wow, look at all these big claims, which would be the COVID cases.
Right.
You must really have a sick population. You're going to pay a high premium.
Oh.
Or because it's been substantiated that COVID affects people with underlying health conditions, they're going to say, wow, you must have a lot of people that are obese or diabetic or asthma or, have these underlying health conditions. So therefore, again, you don't have a healthy population. We're going to really give you a high premium.
Wow. And with so many people getting COVID, and the numbers are just, I've heard for hospital stays, are just astronomical. We just had a guy who's friends with a lot of us, who's in the radio business, who actually contracted COVID, lived in Palm Beach. He was totally against the vaccination, and he was telling people that don't listen to your employers, which now we know that's not great advice, and tell them it's none of their business because of HIPAA, which we know now is, wow, we've learned a lot just in tonight, but he ended up dying from COVID.
That's a shame.
Yeah. And he actually wrote a letter like minutes before he passed away saying, get the vaccination.
Yeah.
So, anyway, for those of you wondering who it was Dick Farrell. Been here for a long time. So, are you finding a lot of fraud?
Absolutely.
Wow, it just blows me away that these big hospitals.
So I've come up with a theory, Steve, and I've called it the boomer doctrine.
Okay.
Okay. And I've been, we obviously talk about what we do, and
Wait a minute, why is this not the Grady doctrine?
well, I'll explain to you in a second. So I was told by several people who are from the baby boomer generation
Okay.
that, they were taught to trust their doctors and don't second guess the doctor. The doctor's a medical professional, they have a
Right.
great education, you don't question your doctor. And I believe that our corporate medicine and these conglomerate hospital facilities understand that way of thinking, and they will bill you as much as they can because people believe that if you question the bill, by extension, you're questioning the doctor.
Ah, okay.
So we're trying to explain to people that the doctor really doesn't know what's happening on the billing end. They don't realize that when they type in, they're sitting at their computer and they're typing in whatever issues that you're talking about, that's spitting out a bill 3 floors below them and getting marked up as much as possible.
If you own a business out there, if you manage a business out there, you really should, it would be worth your time to call Jackie up at her office and set up an appointment, because I think there's a lot of business owners who are uneducated, and I think you would just open their eyes as to what's out there. I mean, we can only do so much with a 30-minute show, but I mean, we're kind of all in a new lane now, and you've got to have someone who's experienced. You know what I love about Jackie's firm is, and I went over there the other day, it's such a cool office, but you don't see like 8 different shingles
Correct.
like you do bankruptcy and family law and Social Security. You mainly work with employment law and now healthcare
Yes.
law. That's it. So guess who's going to know more about employment law than someone who basically that's all they practice? I'm not putting down attorneys that, wear 10 different hats, but this is your baby. This is what you work with.
Sure.
And I got to tell you, I would think now for a business, and I don't care how long you've been in business, we've never been through this before.
No.
And you've got to have someone who's experienced. I mean, look what we've learned tonight on the show. I want to ask you, are there alternatives to employees with this vaccine? Do they have any alternative?
What, to getting the vaccine?
Yeah.
And if the employer's asking or mandating.
I mean, let me give you an example. What if it's a religious reason?
Absolutely. So there are exceptions, right?
That's what I want to know.
Religious exceptions, and there are medical exceptions. And I do know people who are unable to get the vaccine due to allergic reactions.
Okay.
So that would qualify. But again, when we talk about HIPAA, you would have to disclose that to your employer. So if they come in and say, we're requiring vaccines, you would then have to go back and say, I can't get it, and this is my reason why.
But could they fire you?
No.
Okay.
They should not fire you for that.
Okay. But if they did,
Then you would have a claim.
then you got to call Jackie up.
That's correct.
Wow. And I got to tell you, I know customer service is very important to you. You have got the greatest assistant in Jennifer. I mean, this woman is so much on the ball, and that means you're going to get phone calls returned. And that is so important. I love what you're doing. I'm so glad you're going to be with us every month. And our next show is going to be on healthcare law again. You don't want to miss that. Give everybody your phone number again.
Sure, it's 754-333-0313.
And you have a website.
Yes, that's www.gradylegal.com.
Again, so if you've got a business, I really want to recommend to you, because I'm telling it doesn't matter how long you've been in business for. I'm telling you, there's things that you don't know that you will sit down with Jackie about, and you are going to thank me for telling you to call Jackie. Again, give them the phone number one more time.
Sure, it's 754-333-0313.
I love this woman. I love her. We're going to go to break, and we come back. We're going to talk about dental implants. We'll be right back.
Grady Legal PA is a boutique labor, employment, and healthcare firm serving clients throughout Florida. Founded